guys, hope you're all doing well, and I hope that you enjoyed that little intro track featuring myself and Jack Gardiner, who I had the pleasure of talking to the other day. I recorded just a short 30-minute or so conversation with Jack just to catch up with him and ask about, you know, his career in music, what he's up to these days, and yeah, just generally catch up, because I met Jack for the first time at 42 Gear Street number 2 last August, which was an event organised by Henning Pauly at his home in Germany, last August, with a bunch of different YouTubers and gear companies, and I was just such a fun event. Like, thinking back to it now, I really miss all the people that I met there, made some great friends, and Jack was one of them. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Jack Gardiner. All right, Jack Gardiner, thanks for taking the time to have a chat with me. It's been a while since I saw you in Germany. That's the last time I saw you, and that's the first time I met you, actually. So for like the people that are watching this that don't know, me and Jack met for the first time at 42 Gear Street last August at Henning Pauly's place in Germany. And for the people that maybe, I'm sure a lot of people watching this know who you are already, but could you just like explain a little bit about yourself as a guitar player? Like, what are you up to?
Yeah, man. Oh, well, first of all, thanks so much for having me, Ross. Like, it's an absolute pleasure. As you said, we met first in Germany at 42 Gear Street 2, was it? I think that's what they called it, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. But yeah, basically, so I'm a guitarist. I've been playing now since I was like, I guess, electric guitar since I was 11. Classical guitar I actually started when I was 9. I do the whole YouTube thing. I'm making my own music. I think that's probably been the main priority in the past year, I'd say. I like made my debut release with a guy called Owain producing it. This was back, I think, April last year, so it's nearly a year on. And I've also done the whole teaching thing for the past year. So every Friday I've been trying to put like a free lesson out covering basically improvisation-based topics. But now that we're getting into year 2 of lockdown, I'm thinking that I'm going to focus now on the new record. So that's going to be, I think, longer. I just want to put a bit more time into it as well, so that there's more tracks and things like that. It feels like it's a nice cycle that way. I feel like I've got the year through, missing gigs. That's been the only thing. I'm sure you're the same in that sense.
Yeah, you've done some touring work as well, yeah.
Oh yeah. So I play as a sideman with an 80s pop band called China Crisis from Liverpool, which is very much influenced by like Steely Dan, but it had like that whole pop crossover. So there's some lovely like guitar parts to play, actually. Like Walter Becker from Steely Dan was their producer for a while, so there was them. And then I've played with Stu Ham, who was, for those who don't know out there, he was the bass player for like Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, even Holdsworth at one point, like Frank Gambale, those kind of dudes. That was my baptism of fire gig. I think that was the first time I'd ever gone on tour. So playing that stuff was a bit interesting, shall we say? But yeah.
So, like, what were some of the songs on that set list?
Oh man, so it was labelled like the Stu Ham Greatest Hits Tour. So it was basically everything that he played on. There was a few in there which I'm sure we grew up with, like The Animal by Steve Vai. I actually didn't realise it was Stu who played on that. Stuff like Always With Me, Always With You, you know, the Satch tune. But then there was like some weird ones, like it was an Eric Johnson tune. What was it called? Lone Star, I think it was, which I'd never heard before. That was a really nice one to play. I forget just how cool Eric Johnson is as a player. You know, that was like a reintroduction. I'd kind of forgotten about him for a couple of years, so that was nice. And then the Holdsworth stuff, which was kind of out there, shall we say, like even for me who's well into fusion, that was a bit of a moment where it was like, oh, you're on your toes, you've got to really try and nail the changes and things like that. But yeah, man, mainly the Vi and Satch stuff. I think that was what Stu was always known for in the first place, really. It was really cool to go back. He was kind of cool in the sense that some things he wanted note for note. So there's a tune, the Attitude song. Do you know that one? The
I think one? So, yeah. Oh, wait, is that the one that's kind of sounds like Van Halen at the start? Or maybe I'm thinking of something else.
Maybe, yeah. There's loads of crazy tap and stuff in there, but I think like the original had 3 guitar parts on or more maybe.
Right.
And I remember him saying, "Oh, can you play it as close to that as possible?" I remember being like, "Man, how are we going to do this kind of thing?" And he was like, "Oh, I'll play the harmonies on bass." So I was like, "Man, that's still only 2." Like, there's a lot more
Yeah.
to it than that. But no, it was good fun to play. So some things he wanted note for note, and then other things it was like do your own thing. So in the
Okay.
Eric Johnson tunes and the Frank Gambale tunes and stuff like that, it was kind of like play the head, like more like a jazz gig kind of thing. It was play the
Yeah.
head, and then it was solos all around, which was just yeah, loads of fun. Really intimidating at first because you're thinking like, for me, Stu Ham, I remember listening to him as a kid. Vi was like the idol.
Mm.
So when you're there now and he's saying let's trade, bars together, it's a little bit like, oh shit, is this actually happening?
Here we go.
Yeah.
So, how long was the set? Burn it like 45 minutes, an hour?
It was actually, I think, like maybe closer to 2 hours, probably about an hour and
Wow.
40.
Okay. So, like, yeah, close to 2 hours of very virtuosic, if that's a word, material.
Yeah,
Virtuoso-esque, I don't know. Um,
technique heavy, probably, I'd
Technique,
say.
yeah, yeah, flashy stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, how long did you have to, like, between you getting the call to do the tour and actually going out on the first date? Like, how long did you have to prepare those songs? And did you know, like, a bunch of the songs before?
Yeah, so that was lucky in the sense that I think we started speaking probably in like the March or the April, and then the tour didn't start until October. But
Okay.
really, material didn't get passed around until I'd say maybe a month before. So it was a kind of like guesswork of, like, oh, what's he going to pick? I had like a good idea of what he'd played on and things like that. But like I say, the Frank Gambale stuff was a bit of a shock to me, and say some of the Holdsworth stuff as well. So I was trying to learn as much as I could of, or just listen as much as I could to, his back catalogue, shall we say.
Hmm.
But then it was maybe a month, maybe 2 months before is when he'd sent out, okay, this is the final set list. And that was when I kind of had to do my homework. That was like pretty much every day trying to spend, like 5, 6 hours. The hardest thing, to be honest, was, like trying to find the right gear for it and knowing that when I get there, is there going to be gear there that's going to work? Luckily, like Friedman helped me out with that, but it was kind of like, am I going to be able to get the tones which I could get with a plug-in, which is
Okay.
was way
Yeah.
easier at the time. Like live, that's a different thing, isn't it? When you're using like a 4x12 cab and you're the main kind of voice, if you like, you're taking all the heads. That was a little bit nerve-wracking. But no, Stu, we only had one rehearsal. That was the only crazy thing. So we arrived the day before we were about to play one of the biggest gigs, which is like a drum festival on the on the tour, shall I say? And that was a little bit intimidating, when you're thinking, right, we've got a lot of kind of, as you say, like technical music to go
Yeah.
over, and we've only got one playthrough of each tune. That was a little bit nerve wracking. And the other thing was he sprung it on me that, like, in the middle of the set, it was kind of like, I guess, how they do it in the 80s and 90s, where there was a drum solo, there was a bass solo, and there was a guitar solo, which I just didn't know was going to happen. So it was like,
Okay.
oh yeah, you're fine doing, 5 minutes of just playing guitar by yourself, aren't you? And I was thinking, man, I am not a Paul Gilbert to be like, running at the front of the stage with a drill and all that kind of
Oh,
stuff.
mate, you got to do that sometime. I'd love to see that.
Imagine. But yeah, so that was just a bit of a worry because I remember seeing like on the first day, Craig, I think because it was a drum festival as well, Craig Blundell, that is, he's the drummer for Stephen Wilson. He did like maybe like a 10 minute, maybe it felt like 10 minutes, but like maybe 5 to 10 minute drum solo.
Hmm.
Stu did like a 5 to 10 minute thing, and then there was me being like, what am I going to play? This is a bit weird. So that was maybe the biggest learning point, I'd say, for me. I got to play actually one of the tunes which is on Escapades. It was Neo. That ended up being just like the solo guitar spot.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it was intense in the sense that, yeah, like you say, the technical aspect of it all. To do that every night, it was more worrying about, are the chops going to hold? Like,
Mm.
because obviously we all make mistakes and things like that, but there's certain moments in some of those tunes, like in the Attitude song, where there's a break and you really want to nail it every time, every night. And obviously some nights your technique just wouldn't be there, if you've not had enough time to warm up, or maybe the venue's cold or things like that, or that can sometimes play a part in it. So there was a little bit of pressure in that sense, I felt, compared to, say, like, when you're playing as a sideman and you're just kind of, you're not really one of the main focuses, you're not the singer.
Sure.
Like, that was a little bit of a different kind of pressure, I felt, anyway.
Would you get nervous before those types of gigs? Because I mean, like, we've both done the wedding function band thing, and those types of gigs always kind of feels like you're just playing in a room and there's people dancing, but they're not really focusing on you. And like, I myself, like, I've not played a gig where I've had to play like really technically challenging music that I enjoyed playing since I did like my final exam at uni. And I remember that feeling of like being nervous, like, oh my God, this is the first time in a long time where people are actually like looking at me and like focusing exactly on what I'm playing. So I'm curious to hear, do you get nervous? Or would you get nervous at the start of the tour, and would you like kind of gradually ease into it? Or
I think as well it depended on, like, it's all like the factors around what happens on the day, isn't it? So I was definitely nervous before everyone, I'll say that. But like, if you got to a venue and they're friendly with you and they treat you as part of like the place kind of thing, then that was always easier. If you had like a good sound engineer that was there that you could talk to, that felt okay. But if there was like this element of, let's just get on with it, and then you see the crowd come in, that... It's weird, isn't it? I guess even at a wedding, you can judge the crowd, what they want to hear, can't you? With that, I felt that there was sometimes, like, you get the impression that, especially, like, older guys, it's a bit like, arms across. It's like, impress me, show me what you can do, kind of thing.
yeah, I mean, yeah, you do see people like that sometimes, and it's like they're probably enjoying themselves, but when you're looking at them and their body language is just very like stiff and stern, they got their arms crossed, it can kind of feel like they're just waiting, they're banking on you making a mistake so they can turn to their mate and be like, yeah, there we go, there's the first one.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely felt that. The other thing is, it's like in the jazz world, the way that they clap after solos, that always played like a weird mental game with me. So if like the first solo got like a clap, then it felt like, okay, we're in, I can relax and I can play what I want to do. But if it didn't, it almost felt like there was a pressure, especially if one of the other guys got a clap, after me, then it felt like, oh, sugar, am I not playing well here? Like, do I have to do something to impress? And that's not like a good mindset, is it? Like if you're, in reality, when we're playing music, we don't want to be thinking about what they're actually judging, or if they are judging at all. I think that was kind of a worrying mindset, and I suppose like guys who've done that forever, probably it doesn't faze them, but because that was my first time, and probably I'd say 90% of the people that were at those gigs had no idea who I was. It was kind of like, who's this young fella? Like, you feel like you have to make the impression on them that it's okay, I can play this stuff, what I mean? Like, or hopefully I can play this stuff.
Cool. Have you ever done like a solo clinic or like a solo performance at NAMM, anything like that, where it's just been like you and a backing track?
Yeah, tons of them, mate. And that can be even more intimidating than the gigs, I think, depending on who's watching. If you catch an eye of someone, like, then have you done any of these before, Ross? Or?
No, I've not, and like I'm not ashamed to admit, I would be petrified of doing that, like a solo performance at NAMM or something, because NAMM is just full of other guitar players, so it would, even though like people would show up and most people would want you to do well, still like the body language thing of like people just stand like that now, don't they? So it kind of feels it's not really like a gig environment, is it?
Do you know, I'd say, to add to that, the worst thing about NAMM is like the cameras in your face, like it's just
that's another level of pressure, isn't it? It's like I don't really have control of whether or not this goes online if I make a bunch of mistakes.
Yeah, literally, there's that element. And as you say, like some people, I think they're looking maybe for that. You know, it's almost like, can he do it? You know what
Yeah,
I mean? But at
yeah.
the same time, Nam is like the worst environment, I think, to actually hear what someone plays like, just because the noise. You know, you've walked around the
Well, that's
halls,
true.
haven't you?
Yeah.
Man, to be able to hear yourself. I think there's one video on there from a few years ago of me and Tom Quayle jamming at a booth, and we used a backing track, and like the speakers that we were using were maybe like this big, you know, and so if you're like stood away, you can hear it, but I literally, where I'm sat, I can basically hear like the kick and maybe, you know, the hi-hats maybe or something like that.
Right.
And on the video, I think I was even saying to Tom, like, what what's the changes? And you can see on the comments underneath, it's like the man needs to learn how to use his ears and stuff like that. You know, like he shouldn't be asking. And I'm like, dude, if you were there, you'd see.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah. Give
couldn't
me a
hear
break, mate.
anything. Yeah,
You've not been to Nam.
yeah.
Oh man,
So
that's
there's
funny.
that as well, but yeah, that's guitarists though. I seem to find like
Yeah.
drummers and bass players seem like it's a maybe it's not like this. Maybe it's just, you know, my preconception of it, but it seems like they're way more supportive. You know, guitarists seems like there's still a weird element of like this gunslinger type vibe where
Right.
it's like,
Yeah.
can you do that? I'm the fastest gun in the West. You know, like,
Yeah. Our egos are maybe a bit bigger than bass players and drummers. Who
yeah.
knows? Going back to your album or EP escapades. One thing I just noticed the other day, like from watching your YouTube videos, is because you have like quite a unique lighting setup. Is that
Oh yeah.
intended to look like similar to your EP cover? Because the colors, like the blue and the pink and purple, like I just the other day I was watching it, I was like,
Do you
that
know, I
looks like
never
his
thought
album
about
cover.
that, you know? Yeah, that's actually a really good shout. I never ever thought about that yet. It's sat there, and yet, because I have, I think, the purple down below and then the blue
Yeah,
above, that makes sense. I'd never put those two together. So thanks, Ross. Yeah, yeah, that must have been a subconscious thing. Yeah, Jesus.
yeah. No, it looks really cool, man. It's like a very unique looking YouTube setup compared to like a lot of other guitar channels out there.
Oh, cheers, man. I think, yeah, it's one of them. Like when we with Escapades, that was one of the big things when we talked about the artwork was the color scheme, and like the single was sky blue pink, which was something that my granddad used to say, and we never ever knew what it meant. He'd say like, you know, rather than swearing when we were kids, he'd say, "Oh, it's sky blue pink with a finny addy border," and I remember being
Right.
like, "What on earth does that mean?" You know, but we thought, obviously, with sky blue pink rather than doing the full thing, that was kind of like the guide for the color scheme. And I think that's when the artist Ramiro was like, okay, what about light blue with purple
Hmm.
kind of going into pink? And that kind of colour scheme I've always just loved now, you know, since he's shown me the artwork. I think it's stuck. So maybe it's subconsciously that I've gone, okay, let's have the
Right.
top
Yeah.
lights as blue, yeah. Yeah. But
Cool, man.
thanks, man.
I put out a thing on my Instagram story for people to. I said I'm interviewing Jack, so send me some cool questions. Let's take a look. Oh, this is a good one. Tips to find opportunities to be a touring guitarist.
Oh, that's something that's changed a lot, isn't it? I think since maybe the past, like, well, since the internet and YouTube and all of that exploded a bit more. Um, so for both of my gigs, they came in different ways. So China Crisis was, I guess, like the old school way of I was a lad born in Liverpool. I was playing around Liverpool. They were a Liverpool band. In fact, I went to LIPA, which was the Paul McCartney University, for a year. And Eddie, who's like the guitarist in China Crisis and singer, one of the main songwriters, he was a lecturer there. So we we always stayed friends, and you know he was well into Steely Dan and all that. Outside of uni, we'd always chat. And essentially, about 3 years ago, I think it was now, um, two of my other friends who were musicians I was playing in wedding bands with and, you know, like function bands, they were now the permanent members of China Crisis, like a sax player and a keyboard player.
Mhm.
And they invited me to just come to the gig. It was like the Christmas gig at the Cavern in Liverpool, which is like one of their big ones. So I missed the gig. I had a wedding myself, but I went for like a drink with them afterwards. And Eddie, I'll never forget, said to me, "Oh, why don't you come and jam with us sometime?" And it was one of them, when you're at the pub and you think nothing of it, and then 2 weeks later, I think I was at NAMM show, and there was a text saying, "Look, Jack, we're doing like the greatest hits of this album. Can you do the gig in 2 weeks?" And you're like, right, I've got a whole album to learn then of all this stuff.
Yeah.
But man, it's probably the best way to do it because you're so focused. Then you don't go, "Oh, I'll do one tune every couple of days" or something like
Right.
that. It was just like, right, I've got to learn all of these songs now. So that was, I guess, the old school way of just it's someone you know. Whereas
Hmm.
Stu Ham, he was looking for another guitarist, and I think initially, I could be wrong. I think it was supposed to be Bumblefoot,
Oh,
but
okay.
Bumblefoot was like busy with another tour, so he'd asked a mutual friend of ours, did he know anyone? And I think my name was one of a few that had been like put forward.
Right.
And then it was just a case of he'd watched the YouTube videos and an email came out of the blue, like, "Are you interested in doing this?" So that was thanks to YouTube and Instagram, really. Oh, well, not so much Instagram because I don't think it was active on there, but YouTube. That was all through that. So that was kind of the modern way, which I
Yeah.
think a lot of guys. Did you find that you got more of your gigs that way, or is it a mix for you as well?
It's hard to say because I've not really, well, I've never done any touring gigs, but I've gone to efforts to network with people in pursuit of that, particularly like in Nashville. That's why I've gone out there so many times, is to um, because I want to get into like the touring session world eventually, and there's so much of that out there. So I mean, for me, like I think it's just a case of I don't like going to gigs and just like meeting people with the intention of just becoming friends, not so much like appearing like you want to get something from someone.
Yeah.
Like you just make friends in the music industry. That's and you're good. You'll find that opportunities will come your way. So
Dude,
um,
100%. I think every opportunity, that's not just gigging, is it? I think there's usually another layer there that maybe people don't see, that it's got to be a relationship in some way, hasn't it?
yeah,
It's very rare that, for example, with like demo videos or things like that, it's very rare that a company just reach out and that's all they want. It's usually you develop like a kind of, we could have a conversation like this,
of course, yeah, yeah. Obviously, yeah. And then like people always say like Instagram is like the new business card for musicians, which is like one positive of Instagram. I know like both you and I have had like a lot of negative things to say about Instagram in the past. It's such a like Instagram's such a weird thing for me because I think it just occurred to me the other day why I have such like a love hate relationship with it is because YouTube, although it could be classed as a social media network, it doesn't feel like social media when you're using it. It's just like it feels like a search engine.
Yes.
Whereas like Instagram,
Yeah.
it's very social. It's like I use it for work, but there's also like people I know in my personal life that are lumped in with it as well. So it's easy to get
Of course.
yeah, distracted from, just random stories of like people, I don't know, living their everyday lives. So it's just not something you really get on YouTube.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think with YouTube as well, it's the fact that you usually have to set aside a specific amount of time. So if you are going to watch something, you're dedicating that time to it. Whereas
Yeah,
Instagram, as you say, it's just disposable, isn't it? You can
it is.
literally, if you wanted to, you could spend 24 hours on Instagram and probably never see the same story or
Yeah.
picture again. But in reality, how much do you actually remember? It's because the next day something new is going to pop up. It kind of replaces that. I get that that could
Mm,
happen on YouTube as well, but it's a little. I'm totally with you on that. It's a little bit different, isn't it? And I feel like the communities, maybe that's not the right word, but like the viewers and things like that feel different on YouTube. It feels like people there, for me anyway, are like really into what you do if they want to watch your stuff. Whereas on Instagram, it's just a case of a tap, isn't it? And then we
yeah.
can move on. It's like they could be doing that to a million other people.
One style or genre you wish you could play but can't, at least not yet. That's one of the Instagram questions we've got.
There's loads. But like for me, I'd probably say it leans between two, and they're probably way more linked than I think. One is 100% jazz in like just the form of, like more traditional vibes of changes and things like that. Country is the other thing, and I think it's because with both of those styles, I feel like you have to be surrounded by the language from when not necessarily from a young age, but you just have to be so absorbed in it. Did you find that with country? Did you always play it, or was it something that you?
No, I only got into it when I was maybe like 19 or 20 after we went on like a family holiday to Nashville, and so that's what kind of piqued my interest in it. But I still don't feel like I'm really a proficient country player. Like I wouldn't describe myself as a country player. But a friend of mine like described like the country influence on my playing quite well. One day he said, what was it he said? He's like, you're not a country player, but you're country leaning. So like I've adopted like country techniques and I guess phrasing into my style, which is I always think of as like a blend of country, rock, and blues. But yeah, I mean, for me personally, there's not any like genres that I wish I could play. I've kind of gotten over that, but I just want to be better at the ones that I enjoy playing. So that's kind of the goal for me personally. But my camera's about to die, unfortunately. If I do interviews like this in the future, I want to, for the people watching on YouTube, I want to like get more of a longer recording limit so we can like do this without the stress of the red light. But thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me, man.
Dude, no, absolute pleasure, man. You're a star.
Always a pleasure, mate. Right, I'll leave links to Jack's album and his Instagram and all of that good stuff in the description box below. So definitely go and check him out. Thanks for watching, guys. All right, thanks again to Jack for taking the time to sit down and chat with me over Zoom. I will leave links to his music and his Instagram in the description box. On the off chance that you're watching this and you haven't heard Jack's playing before, well, I mean, obviously you heard it right at the start of the video, but anything outside of the intro track, I mean, definitely go and check him out because his playing is just unbelievably good. It's such a joy to listen to. And, I've been lucky enough to sit down and jam with Jack in person, and it's just, he's a force to be reckoned with as a player. So yeah, definitely go and check him out. And do I have anything else to say? No, I think that's it. Just, like the video, click subscribe, and do all that good stuff if you want to see more stuff from me in the future. And yeah, take it easy, guys. I will see you in the next one.